one thing that Zan and I talk about every single week in our marriage meeting is how can I best serve you this upcoming week? Or what's one way that I can serve you better this coming week? And I think that's an opportunity to really get on the same page of, hey, every single week I am given something by Zan of how I can best love her. Hey, 1 Degree fam, I'm Nathaniel.
And I'm Zan, and this is the 1 Degree podcast, where we talk about what it looks like to be married as followers of Jesus.
Look, we know that life gets full. Marriage, kids, work, church, sports, the list goes on and on. But we believe that a thriving marriage does not happen by accident.
Each episode will give you real conversations, practical tools, and biblical encouragement to help you connect deeply with your spouse and live on mission together.
So, whether you're folding laundry, driving to work, or maybe even working out, we're glad you're here with us.
Let's dive in. What is up, 1 Degree fam?
What is up, fam? Welcome back to the comfy, cozy, virtual leather couch.
Before we dive in, don't not forget, as if we've told you, take a second to follow along. I actually don't know the terminology on either platform. I think it's follow on Apple Podcasts. It's like a plus sign on Spotify. I could easily check this, but do whatever it is on your platform so you don't miss next week's episode. We're going to be going into fostering intimacy in your marriage. So stay tuned.
If you want to be the first one when it drops,
yeah, I think
follow
it's at
along,
4 a.m.
subscribe,
Central we drop them.
Whatever it is.
I will be honest. I mean, I'm the one that schedules it, and it's vibes every time. I'm like, is it 4? Is it 4:30? Maybe it's 5 today. I always just like pick a number.
4:43.
There's probably a science to why I should not do that, but
yeah, probably.
Alas, nothing is super professional over here. All right, diving into this week.
We're getting ahead of ourselves because this week we're going to be talking about what it looks like to love your spouse in the way that they best receive it. Because I think that all of us, if we've been married for any period of time, we can all recall a time where we put in a ton of effort. We were going to do something, we were going to surprise our spouse, or we were going to demonstrate our love for them in some way, and we do it, we go through with it, and then the reaction we get is mid or meh.
Stop. Not mid. I haven't heard that in a minute. Do you have one for me?
What do you mean? You have a good example.
I do have a good example because as we were talking about this, it was the first thing that came to my mind because I feel like it's textbook wrong love language. So I'm going to try to be brief because I'm never am with storytelling. But basically, this one day I had this rare opportunity where I was childless because my friend was in town and one kid was napping and she was with the others. And I ran to do some of those errands and I was in Nathaniel's car. Okay, so that's context. After I did some of my errands, I went to the car wash and got the outside all clean. And then I was like, this thing is a mess. It was at its worst. We'll just say that. It's absolute worst. And it's not even the kid car. He didn't even have anyone to blame but himself. But not the point. So I was like, I'm going to get this thing so clean because my love language is acts of service. And I personally, even beyond the acts of service, like the number one thing somebody can do to me, well, I guess it's in line, but do for me is take things off my plate, make my life more efficient, or make my surroundings clean. I want to always be in every area to be clean and cozy. And so I was going to make his car clean and cozy. And I spent over an hour, which doesn't seem like a ton of time, but when you're only detailing a car, so I'm vacuuming, I'm scrubbing with their microfiber cloths, all the things, and I pick him up for work from his lunch break, and I was like, for sure. You rehearse it in your head, the reaction, it's going to be like, whoa, thank you so much. We're 8 minutes into the drive, and he hasn't said a single word. I'm like, did you not notice that I cleaned this car?
And I was like, it did kind of look cleaner.
And then he points out that I missed some dust on this dashboard because you're in the covered area. The sun isn't shining on all the dust, so you don't necessarily see it all. And we're in the sun now, and he sees it. I was like, wow.
Not the reaction you were looking for.
Admittedly, I'm obviously not supposed to be doing things for reaction. But
no, it was that idea of, I think all of us have had that experience where we do something and we think it's going to be this big, awesome
Just very
thing.
appreciative thing. There's
Yes.
two sides to this episode, which we will only go into one. We're gonna go into the making sure your spouse receives love. But there is, like I said,
Yeah,
that
the
aspect of, like, there's
gratitude.
important gratitude, but also it's important that we don't do things to feel appreciated.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think a
yeah.
lot of times I'm acts of service and I'm also very prideful, and I can do acts of service with an expectation of some kind of gratitude. Not
See,
like reciprocation by any means, just like I want it to feel appreciated.
this is I am noticing, like, I am just not as much acts of service because this is actually sparking in my mind another memory. We went out of town on a trip, and the day before we came back, one of my best friends, he cleaned our upstairs, like, he deep cleaned our upstairs, and when I came back, I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's pretty clean." I just didn't even think
See, for
about the
me,
fact.
I just didn't even like, I can never it was too far removed, I didn't remember how I left it. I was like, "Did I clean up before we left or not?"
But I
Which is
remember
horrible.
he was like, "Oh, man, that was, like, kind of a bummer. It just felt unappreciated," all
Mhm.
that kinda stuff, and it was a good conversation, but it was just one of those that I don't necessarily receive love in
Not at all.
acts of
You don't, and
service.
it's hard it is a tension. So that's setting the stage for this
Yeah,
conversation because that is a very real tension in our marriage because I am so acts of service, and I want to receive them, I want to give them, and they just miss for you
or maybe it's
entirely.
certain acts of service because same friend, we had gotten a snowstorm when we were out of town, and he shoveled our whole
Okay, you know what it
driveway.
is for you? It's acts of service. It's things that you prioritize. So, like, he shoveled the driveway for us.
Yeah,
That would have been your task.
yeah,
Me cleaning the house, me doing laundry, like, not in a bad way, but those are me things. Like,
yeah.
so somebody else doing them for me feels really big for me, but for you, it's like, great, I didn't care that much about this house being that level of clean.
Yeah. Well, it's that it goes back to that whole thing, like, I help you clean, help you do the laundry, but you have a much higher standard of cleanliness than I do. So I'll be like, "Oh,
Mhm.
we're done."
If you've been
You're
here, you
like,
know the
"Oh,
lore.
we
The
just
lore
got
is that
started."
I actually want the house clean and he doesn't care, and so we call it different standards.
All right. So bringing it back to this idea of what does it look like to love our spouse in the ways that they feel most loved? Because I think oftentimes what comes most naturally to us, even if we don't have this thought of, oh, I'm a words of affirmation person, I'm going to give my spouse words of affirmation, even if we don't have that tangible thought process, we kind of have like, this is what comes most
Naturally.
naturally to me. So that's how I then express my love. That's what I most appreciate. That's what comes naturally. That's how I'm then going to express my love. And ultimately, it's this idea that love is a form of self expression when you're doing that versus self sacrifice
Or
and
self-giving.
self giving. And I think that's where we're going to start with is this idea of love. When you demonstrate love to your spouse, it should be this form of self sacrifice or self giving, not a form of self expression, because I think that's what we see most in scripture. This
Mhm.
idea, I think one of the best imagery, one of the best images of love in the Bible is obviously the story of Jesus, but is really detailed succinctly in Philippians 2. Christ, being in the form of God, did not count equality with God as something to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking on the form of a servant. And, what did he do? He came down, lived the perfect life we couldn't live, died the death that we deserve, and rose from the dead so that we could be reconciled to God. That was ultimately just kind of the ultimate example of self-sacrificial, self-giving love, not necessarily love that was self-expressive. And I
Mhm.
think that this is honestly super countercultural
For sure.
because we have this mentality of, oh, if I loved them or if I demonstrate my love and they don't receive it well, they should be more grateful or they should be, you're kind of pointing the finger at them. And I think that there is something to be said about, yes, we should be grateful if our spouse tries to demonstrate love to us. And even if it's not the way that we necessarily receive it, we should still be grateful. But when we're evaluating ourselves, our first action or our first thought shouldn't be, oh, my spouse needs to receive it better. It's how can I demonstrate my love for my spouse better in a way that is self giving and self sacrificial. So I think it
Mhm.
starts with asking the question, hey, how do they feel most loved? And,
Yeah.
by asking them.
I think it is as simple as that. There might have to be some fleshing out what that looks like as far I mean, some people I think are very self-aware
Yeah.
or okay, also to rewind a little bit, I alluded to the love languages in the beginning of like, oh, this is classic love language.
Hmm.
So if you haven't heard, I think I was exposed for the first time at like 11 years old, and my friends and I all took the 5 love language assessment. It's probably evolved in the last 2 decades, but Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. Google it, ask Chat about it. Very simple to understand. It's basically those 5. There's 5 different buckets. There's words of affirmation. Let me just look at my list so I don't
Acts
try
of
to do it.
service.
Acts of service, receiving gifts, physical touch, and quality time. So you can kind of assume what those are, but maybe, like I said, some people are more self-aware or not. Like you've really thought about it, or you've like been exposed to the love languages before. You already know what it is. You can just express that. Or maybe it's like thinking through examples of like, okay, when I did this for you versus this for you, like which one made you feel more loved is maybe an abstract way to put it. Like,
Yep.
which one made you feel more seen? Which one made you feel more filled up, more connected to
So
me?
there's the
More.
thumbs up.
Oh my goodness, has that always done that?
No, it did it last time for like the first time.
Oh, interesting. I don't know what happened. Anyway, if you're not watching on YouTube, actually, I don't even know if it's going to show up on YouTube. It did the like automatic thumbs up that my Google
It
Meets
was
do.
really liking what you were saying, and then I ruined
Yeah.
it.
But so yeah, ask what lands the best for you. Like I know for Nathaniel, words of affirmation, especially in written form. Like if I really want to fill his cup, if he's having a hard week, unfortunately, a lot of times, because that's not, I also appreciate those for sure. I think it's just less natural for me in the like, it's a very intentional act to sit down and write a note,
Yeah.
like in the busyness of life. And so honestly, I only think to do that a lot of times when it's like an occasion or a especially hard week. I couldn't even tell you the
Yeah.
last time I did it. It's horrible. This episode's maybe revealing our own
I think
faults.
it's funny. We were talking before this episode, and we were saying this is something that's also for us because I don't necessarily think we are the best examples or role models of
We
what it
are
looks like to love our spouse, how
we're
they best receive it.
Yeah, we're very much alongside you in the it is very easy in the busyness. We're in the very busy season of life. The little
Yeah.
kids, working, all of those things where, like I just said, it's almost like we love each other efficiently of like, okay, you love me in my love language of helping clean up the house because that's like what we're doing quickly together at the end of the
Yeah.
night. And it's convenient that that's also a love language. Words of affirmation are less, like, especially in the written form, are just less plentiful in this
Yeah.
season because we're not slowing down. That's not an excuse. That's just to say
Hey,
we're right there with
you.
you. But anyway, so yeah,
I will
ask your spouse,
say,
talk through it.
yeah, and you might be thinking, okay, what exactly do I ask my spouse? So here are some questions that you can ask your spouse to then really
We
get
talked
a
about
good
this.
idea
Like what
of,
fills you up.
yeah, but I would say like explicitly, when do you feel most seen by me? Or when do you feel most loved by me? What do I do that fills you up? Kind of like Zan was saying. And then here's a good one. This one is like, what do I do that doesn't land the way that I think it does?
Yeah, like you can tell they're doing it as a kind gesture, but it doesn't necessarily like that you don't appreciate it at the same level of the sacrifice they're giving.
Yeah, exactly.
I Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and then the last one, again, not to plug the marriage meeting again,
Mm.
but one thing that Zan and I talk about every single week in our marriage meeting is how can I best serve you this upcoming week? Or what's one way that I can serve you better this coming week? And I think that's an opportunity to really get on the same page of, hey, every single week I am given something by Zan of how I can best love her, how I can best serve
Well, so
her.
that's what I want to clarify. If you're somebody who does the weekly marriage meeting and you follow to some degree the
Mhm.
template that we're doing, so you have that question as part of your marriage meeting, I think you can read that as like, which act of service can I do for you?
Yeah.
But I think you can interpret that question as like, how can I best love you as a form of like love
Yeah.
as an action versus love as a feeling this week for you? So it could be if you're receiving gifts, for example, people hear that and it's like, okay, yeah, everyone loves to get a present. That can be like, hey, I'd really love it if you woke up. That could be an act of service too. Woke up and made me coffee or like picked up a
Well,
fun surprise for me during the
one of the
week just to,
ones you used the other week was, like, "Well, how can I best serve you this week?" And you had said, "Oh, when you get home from work, I just really appreciate if, like, the first action is a hug and just, asking how my day was, checking in throughout the day, all of that kinda
yeah,
stuff," you
I had
know?
said sometimes maybe I just like every love language because that's a little bit more quality time. But for me, it's like if you come home and you're very intentional with the kids, which
Yeah.
I very much appreciate, and I do feel loved by that because when you
Mhm.
serve our family, that feels loving to me. But sometimes I'm like, I haven't talked to an adult in person all day or of any depth,
Yeah.
and I just want to feel a hug of, like, resetting my nervous system after being with the kids all day, all those kinds of things. So, yeah, you just be explicit with those things, and I think a lot of it is also being in tune with your own, like, being self-aware of, like, what would make you feel the most, and that
Yeah.
that comes with time and practice of realizing and then being vulnerable and honest enough to share those things.
And that's why I can't stress enough the importance of just that regular weekly touch point,
Weekly
And so,
rhythm.
because if you do this once
Mhm.
of, hey, what do I do that makes you feel most loved? That's probably going to change
Oh,
over
for
the
sure.
years.
Yeah.
And so, when you're regularly touching base and talking about how I can best serve you this upcoming week, that allows the opportunity for those types of conversations to happen.
Mhm.
So you might be hearing this and you might be thinking, okay, this all sounds good. But my initial thoughts, if I'm being honest, is, maybe it's why can't they receive love the way I express it? Isn't that a problem of gratitude? And I just go back to this idea in scripture. If you've listened to us before, I'm passionate about the fact that scripture is always about introspection first. Take the log out of your own eye first. Carry, pick up your cross and follow Jesus first. It's about this idea of rather than looking outward at your neighbor, it doesn't say don't look at your neighbor, but first we need to look inward. And so when that comes in the context of marriage, of instead of first asking that question, how come they can't receive love in the way that I express it? Your first question instead should be, how can I better show my spouse love in the way they best receive it? And I think that's what it looks like to
Mhm.
look inward first. Another thing that, might be asked is, okay, I try to do this, but I just feel exhausted and I feel like they don't reciprocate
Yeah.
and everything like
I
that.
think that's a common feeling of, like, okay, I'm gonna put in all this effort and they're still not gonna do anything
Yeah.
for me, which comes back to that Philippians 2 and just the idea of self-sacrifice of maybe that's true. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
where you're gonna go with this. My mind is like, we did an episode on this recently more with, like, the spiritual of, like, you're
Hmm.
putting in a lot of spiritual effort and it's not reciprocated and it's like, okay. Or I think we did an episode, Fix Yourself, Not Your Spouse, and it was
Yes.
talking
Yeah.
about, like, we don't do things transactionally. That is hard. That's
It
part of
is.
dying to ourselves. Like, there's
Yeah.
really no way to wrap this up with a pretty bow of, like, but it's like, it is hard. And I think that at the end of the day, that's why we do things for eternal and heavenly reward and not for
Yeah.
earthly reward. And sometimes that is the hope that keeps you going. But there is also that hope of scripture of, like, winning your spouse over. Ugh, I'm not good at this. What is it? Winning your
Oh,
spouse over according
yeah.
to
It's
with
the
your
Peter.
actions.
It's First Peter
Yeah,
where it talks about this idea of like wives can win their husbands over
deeds.
without a word,
It's like with their.
because of their actions
Is it
or
just actions?
no,
I'm trying to find
because
it,
they're
but
good deeds.
good
I don't
deeds. Is
know.
that what it is?
No.
Anyway, it's basically that idea of maybe there is that earthly hope of winning them over, but maybe it's for eternal
And
reward.
also, it's important to clarify that Peter there is talking about the gospel, talking about them becoming a believer.
That
He's
was
not
more
talking
relevant
about,
to our spiritual
yes,
conversation, but it
yeah,
did
yeah.
come to my mind,
No,
yes.
I get what you're saying. And I would also say that the last thing I would want to address is you might think, okay, I already know how they feel most loved. But just like we talked about before, love and the ways that you feel most loved are going to change throughout the year. So this needs to be something
In
that you're
seasons.
regularly talking about, that you're regularly asking, because true love is not about self-expression. It is about self-sacrifice and self-giving. It is not about reciprocation. It is not about yourself. It is about genuinely seeking to serve your spouse to the best of your ability. And I would say too that it's important to note we are not called to suffer alone, suffer in silence. We address this a lot in the
Fix
fix
yourself, not your
yourself, your
spouse.
spouse, not your spouse episode. And so if you are suffering, it doesn't mean don't, consult peers, consult mentors, consult pastors, and everything like that. Do not suffer in silence. I think that's important. But at the end of the day, we need to remember that true love is not about reciprocation. It's not about getting the reaction that you wanted to get. Because if you're doing it for the
Equal and opposite
reaction,
reaction, Newton's
yeah.
laws,
But if you're
man.
doing it for the reaction, that means you're not doing it out of true love. You're doing it because you ultimately want to feel good about what you did for them.
And I think there's a tinge, maybe I'm projecting, but I think there's a tinge of that in everything. We talk
Yeah.
about that there. If
Yes.
sin is the color blue, there's a tinge of blue in everything we do.
Yep.
Is it supposed to rhyme? I don't know, but it just did.
Yeah.
Is
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
I
That
didn't
was
know if that's
from
the
one of
original.
my seminary professors. Yeah.
But I think about that a lot. It's like even our, for me, again, I might be projecting on everyone, but it's like even my most pure actions, there's a tinge of like, I hope this is noticed.
Yeah.
Or like by somebody, like even if it's just the person, it's like, I just hope maybe they feel like really appreciate whatever it is. So, I don't know where I was going with that other than I had a brain. There was a trip. Sorry. Actually, my brain is completely blank right now, so you pick up.
No, I was just going to say one last thing I would want to encourage you as well. If you're listening to this and you're saying that, man, I've asked them, I feel like I do it, and I still just don't feel like they receive it well. The other thing I would encourage you is to ask yourself, are you doing the bare minimum? Or are you seeking to go above and beyond? And this is what I mean by that. And not bare minimum in the sense of like you're just trying to skate by, but are you trying to elevate the way that you love your spouse? So if they're a words of affirmation person, are you giving them vague praise of, oh yeah, you're so attractive, or oh yeah, you're so beautiful?
Or like, oh, I appreciate everything you do versus like, I really appreciate the way you sacrificially continue to power through even though I know you're tired
Yeah.
and you're continuing to go above and beyond for the kids and like, like
yes, doing this
naming the exact
specific.
things.
Yes, exactly. I really appreciate last night in the middle of the night you got up with Asher, and I know that it's really hard for you to get up in the middle of the night because you struggle going back to sleep. So just
At
know
first I
that
thought
was
you were
very much
praising yourself
appreciated.
because you got up with Asher, but then you started making it as if I got up with Asher because I'm the one that struggles to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
So that was just an example, I guess.
But, if they value quality time together, are you sitting on the couch and calling
Watching a
that
show
quality
together,
time?
which maybe is your ideal, or is it like, hey, let's like asking them, what is something that you would really love to do this week
Yeah.
and making it something that's not as convenient to your life?
Putting away technology and having, an undistracted conversation. If they value acts of service, are you waiting for them to ask for help, or are you trying to proactively seek out what they might need the most help with? And so when I say going above and beyond, I'm not saying like the bare minimum. When I say bare minimum, it's not like, oh, you're starting from nowhere. I just want to encourage you to take that next step. Okay, you're already seeking to love them in the way they feel most loved. Now take that
How can you
next
level
step.
it up?
How can you level it
How
up?
can you kill them with
That's right.
kindness and love?
Yeah.
All right, what is our 1 degree shift?
1 degree shift, I would say, is specifically this week, ask your spouse, how do you feel most loved by me? And then as they answer that, seek to love them in that way this week.
Yeah. And I would just say, I liked what you were talking about with the importance of that weekly cadence and checking in because it's not like, all right, on this day in 2026, we got clear on our love languages and it's this linear line forward of like, okay, we're going to linear line, a little redundant here, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, then we figured it out. It's not that. It's going to be this week. And again, it's not that it's changing every week anyway. Just check in, tweak accordingly, have conversations accordingly.
On a weekly basis, ask your spouse, how can I best love you this week? How can I best serve you this week?
Yeah.
Huh?
Love. Yeah. I like that. I like that change in terminology of like, how can I best...
Maybe we need to, next iteration of the journals.
We're always looking for improvement. If you got any other recommendations, let us know.
There you go.
All right, catch you next week. 1 degree fam, talking about fostering intimacy.
1 degree fam. Get it? Love ya. 1 degree fam.
No, I don't. What is it?
Our whole episode was how we can best love your spouse.
We're loving you how you feel love.
Oh,
Just pretend we are. Okay, bye.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the 1 Degree Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd be so appreciative if you take just a few seconds to leave a rating and a quick review. We love to hear your feedback, and those ratings really do help make it easier for others to find this podcast.
And if you want to continue this chat or share your takeaways, we'd love to hear from you. Head on over to our Instagram at the 1 Degree Podcast and leave a comment or send us a DM. We can't wait to hear from you. Catch you next week, 1 Degree fam.